Welcome, dear listener, to a quiet moment, a tranquil space where the echoes of history gently unfold, inviting your mind to unwind and your body to relax. As the day's concerns begin to soften and fade, let us embark on a calming journey, a voyage into the life and luminous ideas of a truly extraordinary spirit, Rosa Luxemburg. Tonight we mark a particular moment, an anniversary of a somber day from a distant past, a day when the vibrant life of this remarkable woman was tragically brought to an end, 103 years ago. She was taken for the profound beliefs she held, for the vision of a more just and equitable world that she championed with every fiber of her being, a vision of socialist world revolution. And as we consider her legacy, allowing her story to gently wash over us, we find that her profound insights resonate with a quiet power, perhaps even more so in our contemporary world. It is a fitting time, a century and more after her passing, to gently set the record straight, to understand Rosa Luxemburg not through the filters of various interpretations, but as the outstanding revolutionary Marxist that she truly was. Her legacy, a tapestry woven with threads of deep thought, courageous action, and an unwavering commitment to humanity, belongs to all who seek a world transformed, a world built on principles of justice and solidarity. So, as you settle deeper into your comfort, letting the gentle rhythm of these words guide you, allow your mind to drift back in time, to the late 19th century, and meet Rosa Luxemburg, a woman whose journey began in a world far removed from the one we inhabit today, yet whose spirit speaks across the ages with remarkable clarity. She entered this world in the year 1871, in a region of Poland that at that time lay under Russian occupation. From her very beginnings, she carried a rich tapestry of identities that shaped her unique perspective and profound sensitivity to injustice. She was a Pole, living in a land where her native language was often suppressed, a silent struggle in the classrooms of her youth. She was also of Jewish heritage, an identity that brought with it its own set of challenges and experiences in the social landscape of the era. And of course she was a woman, navigating a world that offered limited avenues for female voices, particularly those that dared to challenge the prevailing order. These interwoven aspects of her being, her Polish identity, her Jewish roots, and her womanhood, provided her with a deeply personal and keenly felt understanding of oppression. It was an understanding, a profound awareness, that began to take root within her at a remarkably early age, stirring a passionate desire for change. Even during her high school years, long before many begin to contemplate their place in the larger world, Rosa Luxemburg became politically active, her intellect ignited by the burning injustices she perceived around her. Her commitment to these nascent ideals was so strong, so unwavering, that by the time she was not yet 20 years old, she found herself compelled to leave her homeland. To avoid arrest for her political activities, she made the significant journey to Switzerland, a country that for many became a sanctuary for radical thought and political exiles. There, amidst the serene Swiss landscapes, her political work blossomed. She continued to hone her intellectual tools, to engage in vibrant debates, and to deepen her commitment to the socialist cause, preparing herself for the larger stage that awaited her. In 1898, drawn by the currents of change and the burgeoning workers' movement, Rosa Luxemburg made another pivotal move, relocating to Berlin. Germany at that time was home to what was arguably the most significant working-class movement on an international scale, the German Social Democratic Party, often referred to as the SPD. This party stood as a towering symbol, a veritable crown within the Second International, a global alliance of socialist and labor parties. It was a magnet for brilliant minds and dedicated activists, and Rosa Luxemburg, with her keen intellect and passionate convictions, was undoubtedly one of them. However, upon her arrival, the established leadership of the SPD, observing her formidable intellect and independent spirit, perceived her perhaps as a difficult woman. In an attempt to channel her energies, or perhaps to gently divert them from the main currents of debate, they tried to steer her towards the women's movement, which, to its credit, was a significant and active part of the Social Democratic Party. But this path, this gentle sidetracking, was simply not in the nature of Rosa Luxemburg. She was not one to be confined or redirected. Instead, with characteristic vigor and intellectual courage, she plunged headfirst into the central debates of the movement, positioning herself at the very heart of the discussions that would define the future of socialism. When she arrived in Germany, the intellectual landscape of the SPD was deeply embroiled in a pivotal debate known as revisionism. This movement, prominently advanced by Edward Bernstein, sought to fundamentally revise the program and core tenets of Marxism, advocating for a shift towards reformist lines. At its heart, revisionism proposed relinquishing the idea of a revolutionary struggle for a socialist world, suggesting instead that socialism could be achieved gradually, through parliamentary means and incremental reforms within the existing capitalist framework. This was not a minor disagreement. It was a fundamental challenge to the very essence of the revolutionary Marxist project. Rosa Luxemburg, with her profound understanding of Marxist theory and her unwavering revolutionary spirit, immediately positioned herself at the forefront of the fight against this revisionist current. She recognized that to abandon the goal of socialist revolution was to abandon the very possibility of true emancipation for the working class. Her powerful arguments, articulated with clarity and intellectual rigor, made her a central figure not only within the SPD, but also on an international scale. From that moment forward, she became a steadfast defender of Marxist ideas and the revolutionary program of the SPD, continually challenging what she perceived as the reformist degeneration taking place within the movement. Her voice was clear, her vision unclouded, as she argued passionately for the necessity of revolutionary change. It was in this period that she penned one of her most enduring and powerful works, a book that remains a timeless masterpiece, Reform or Revolution. This profound text is not merely a historical document. It is a deep and lucid exploration of the fundamental differences between reformist approaches and revolutionary transformation. As you gently drift, allowing your mind to absorb these ideas, consider that the arguments she so skillfully articulated within its pages continue to resonate today. You might recognize echoes of these very debates in contemporary discussions across various political landscapes. Her work offers a timeless framework for understanding the path to genuine societal change, challenging us to consider whether incremental adjustments within an existing system can truly lead to a fundamentally different world, or if a more profound revolutionary shift is ultimately necessary. I would encourage anyone seeking deeper understanding, or simply a quiet intellectual engagement, to gently explore this remarkable book. Within its pages, you will find her own words, her own meticulously crafted arguments, which serve as the clearest antidote to any misinterpretations or distortions of her legacy. It is in reading her directly that we truly encounter Rosa Luxemburg, the astute analyst, the unwavering revolutionary. From this period onward, Rosa Luxemburg continued to play a pivotal role, fiercely combating the opportunist and reformist degeneration within the German Social Democratic Party and across the international socialist movement. This relentless intellectual and political struggle, waged with unwavering conviction, eventually led her to a crucial juncture, her integral part in the founding of the German Communist Party. It was this same unwavering commitment, this unyielding fight for a truly revolutionary path, that would tragically cost her her life in the stark winter days of January 1919. Since her death, Rosa Luxemburg has in many ways transformed into a powerful left-wing icon. Her image, her name, her spirit adorn the walls and inspire the hearts of many who identify with progressive and revolutionary ideals. Yet, paradoxically, if one listens closely to the narratives that often surround her, a curious distortion emerges. Her profound ideas, her meticulously crafted arguments, have sometimes been presented in ways that do not fully capture their essence. A concept, often referred to as Luxemburgism, has been created or invented, suggesting that she represented a distinct trend within Marxism. This interpretation often portrays her as being opposed not only to reformism, which she indeed was, but also, crucially, to Leninism and Bolshevism, thereby positioning her as a kind of third way, a softer, gentler form of leftism that was neither reformist nor, as some would argue, hardline, revolutionary. This particular portrayal, while perhaps appealing to those who wish to avoid the complexities of certain historical revolutionary paths, often paints a less accurate, and in some cases, a fundamentally dishonest picture of who Rosa Luxemburg truly was, what she profoundly believed, and what she dedicated her life to achieving. It can seem on the surface quite attractive to young, earnest communists, who understandably may be seeking alternatives to what they have been told is Leninism, but which in reality is often a distorted understanding of Stalinism. In their healthy rejection of authoritarianism and bureaucracy, they might seek a different path, a different figure, and so they encounter this softer, gentler version of Luxemburg. They are told that this Luxemburgism is distinct from Leninism, leading them to perhaps prematurely discard Leninism altogether. However, this portrayal, this gentle suggestion of a fundamental ideological rift between Luxemburg and Lenin, does not stand up to the meticulous scrutiny of her complete body of work. If one delves deeply into everything she wrote, into every action she took, it becomes undeniably clear that Rosa Luxemburg, at her core, stood on the same side as Lenin and the Bolsheviks. She was, without question, a dedicated Marxist and an unyielding revolutionary. Only by selectively taking quotes and texts out of their broader context, by carefully choosing specific phrases while overlooking the vast expanse of her consistent thought and action, can one construct this distorted image. This is a process, I believe, that is often done with a profound lack of historical integrity, a deliberate reshaping of a complex legacy. Therefore, as we gently continue our exploration, I would again extend a quiet invitation. Immerse yourself in her original texts, her own words. This is, in essence, the very spirit behind reclaiming her revolutionary legacy, understanding her not as a fragmented collection of convenient quotes, but as a holistic and consistent revolutionary thinker. It is the same legacy that we, as the international Marxist tendency, uphold and strive for, the fight for a world socialist revolution, a struggle that must be firmly rooted in the sound theoretical foundations of Marxist thought. This foundation, vibrant and dynamic, incorporates the invaluable experiences of Lenin and the Bolsheviks, and just as crucially, the profound insights and unwavering spirit of Rosa Luxemburg herself. Now, as you settle deeper into your comfort, letting the gentle cadences of this story lull your mind, I want to dedicate our remaining time to gently unraveling what I believe are the two most persistent, and perhaps politically misleading, myths surrounding Rosa Luxemburg. These are the myths that seek to paint her as an anti-Leninist and an anti-Bolshevik. My hope, as we quietly delve into these historical layers, is that by the end of our journey, you will agree that these common misconceptions are fundamentally untrue, that they distort the true nature of her alliances and her convictions. She was, in essence, neither an anti-Leninist nor an anti-Bolshevik in any meaningful sense that historical honesty would allow. The first of these enduring myths suggests that Rosa Luxemburg possessed a unique theory of spontaneity, and that she was fundamentally against the idea of constructing a robust, revolutionary organization that would actively lead the working class. This portrayal often suggests that she believed the revolution would simply emerge organically from the workers themselves, without the need for conscious organized leadership. The second myth, equally pervasive, posits that she was a staunch opponent of the Russian Revolution of 1917 and of the Bolsheviks who led it. Both of these assertions, I will gently argue, are ultimately misrepresentations, not reflecting the full depth and nuance of her thought and actions. Let us now, with calm deliberation, explore why this is the case. Let us begin by gently addressing the first myth, the question of organization and spontaneity. We are often told that Luxemburg stood solely for the spontaneity of the masses, in stark opposition to what is often presented as the Leninist model of a highly centralized monolithic revolutionary party. It is her profound work, the mass strike, the political party, and the trade unions, that is most frequently invoked to construct this myth, with various quotes often taken out of their larger context. However, this claim, this widely circulated misconception, fundamentally misses several crucial points. It overlooks the specific historical context in which she wrote the text, the precise targets of her political critique, and most importantly, the broader message she intended to convey. To claim that Luxemburg dismissed the vital concept of revolutionary leadership requires a careful and ultimately misleading extraction of phrases from her comprehensive argument. Her text, when read in its entirety, simply does not support such a conclusion. It is not at its core an argument against leadership, but rather a sophisticated analysis of how leadership must interact with the dynamic forces of mass movements. The article itself is a masterful analysis of the First Russian Revolution of 1905, a period of immense social upheaval and groundbreaking innovation. In this work, Luxemburg meticulously explains how the Russian masses, driven by an inherent desire for change and responding to oppressive conditions, spontaneously rose in widespread mass strikes. She vividly describes how, out of this powerful organic surge of activity, new organs of workers' power, known as Soviets, began to emerge. These Soviets were not theoretical constructs dreamt up in advance by Marxist thinkers. They were, as she observed, the genuine invention of the workers themselves, arising organically from the immediate needs and dynamics of the revolutionary process. Her explanation of this spontaneous creative process is, by all accounts, exceptionally insightful and profound. This illuminating article was written at a time when Germany itself was experiencing a wave of strikes, deeply inspired by the revolutionary fervor that had swept through Russia in 1905. Within the German Social Democratic Party, a vigorous discussion was taking place about the nature of the mass strike, what it was, how it manifested, and crucially, how the party should respond to these burgeoning movements on its own soil. It was into this vital, unfolding debate that Rosa Luxemburg offered her groundbreaking article, providing a necessary and deeply analytical perspective. In Russia, the workers' movement in 1905 was, in many ways, still nascent and relatively weak. In stark contrast, Germany boasted powerful trade unions and a mass social democratic party, deeply rooted within the working class. Yet, despite this organizational strength, the established leaders of the German workers' movement often regarded these new spontaneous strikes with a certain disdain, dismissing them as immature or doomed to fail. On the other side of this emerging divide, Rosa Luxemburg and the revolutionary wing of the SPD enthusiastically welcomed these strikes. They argued passionately for the critical need for the party to actively intervene, to engage with these spontaneous movements, and to provide them with clear political leadership and direction. Throughout her article, a consistent and undeniable theme emerges. The party, she asserted, has a vital role to play. It must intervene, it must put forward a clear political path, and it must lead the masses towards revolutionary change. This perspective, woven into the very fabric of her analysis, makes it abundantly clear that she was not advocating for a leaderless movement or dismissing the necessity of political organization. Rather, she was emphasizing the dynamic interplay between the spontaneous eruption of mass action and the conscious, guiding hand of a revolutionary party. Her article, then, was specifically crafted for this internal German debate, serving as a trenchant critique of the leadership of the German Social Democratic Party. It was not, as some Luxemburgists mistakenly claim, a critique of the Bolsheviks. She criticized the SPD leadership for treating the mass movement as if it were a mere pocket knife, something that could be opened and closed, deployed or withdrawn, entirely at their convenience, for the perceived purposes of the party. Instead, Luxemburg articulated a profound truth. The masses, driven by their own conditions and desires, move without seeking permission from any party, as was vividly demonstrated in Russia in 1905. This analysis, this deep understanding of the organic unfolding of mass movements, was something that Lenin himself completely agreed with. It is, in fact, another significant distortion to claim that Lenin believed mass movements was something the party could simply switch on or off at will. He too fully understood and appreciated the spontaneous genesis of mass movements. And it was upon this shared understanding that Luxemburg, in full agreement with Lenin, argued that once the workers began to move, once their collective power ignited spontaneously, it then became the indispensable role of the party to provide this burgeoning movement with a clear direction and decisive leadership. On this fundamental point, the dynamic relationship between spontaneity and leadership, Lenin and Luxemburg were in complete and profound agreement, their minds converging on a shared understanding of revolutionary dynamics. In December of 1905, as the First Russian Revolution continued its powerful sweep across the land, Rosa Luxemburg, driven by an urgent desire to be at the heart of the unfolding events, traveled to the Russian-occupied part of Poland. It must have been an incredibly challenging experience for her to witness such transformative events from a distance in Germany, feeling the magnetic pull of the revolution. She arrived, however, as the revolution was already beginning to wane, its initial crest having passed. Her direct participation in the revolutionary movement was tragically cut short when she was arrested in March 1906. After her release in the summer of that year, she journeyed to Finland, a place where many Bolshevik leaders had found refuge. There, she spent a significant period engaging in deep, extensive discussions with them, collectively dissecting and drawing lessons from the Russian Revolution. When one reads Lenin's own descriptions of these profound exchanges, it becomes remarkably clear that there was a complete and shared understanding between Luxemburg and the principal Bolshevik leaders regarding their evaluation of the Russian Revolution. In fact, Lenin, with characteristic insight, observed that she was one of the very few individuals outside of Russia who truly grasped the fundamental lessons of that transformative period. In 1907, her intellectual and she did, however, articulate one critical point regarding the Bolsheviks in her otherwise overwhelmingly supportive speech. While she wholeheartedly agreed with them that the next logical step in the Russian Revolution, had it been victorious, should have been an armed uprising of the workers, a point often falsely attributed to her as being against. She felt that the Bolsheviks placed a slight overemphasis on the technical aspects of such an uprising, rather than on the political side. Here she explicitly stated her agreement with the Bolsheviks that the only logical next step in Russia in 1905 or 1906 would have been the arming of the workers. This reveals something deeper about Luxemburg's general approach, and perhaps what could be seen as a minor weakness in her overall perspective, a slightly more abstract approach to the question of practical organization. Having come from the vast and highly organized German SPD, she may have believed that certain organizational details would naturally resolve themselves. The Bolsheviks, however, operating in very different and much more challenging conditions, had to painstakingly organize every aspect themselves. History, in its unfolding, later demonstrated that the Bolsheviks were indeed correct in recognizing the crucial need to organize not only politically, but also practically and technically for a revolution to succeed. Yet, even in this nuanced critique, it is profoundly clear that when Luxemburg offered her perspective on the Bolsheviks, she was not rejecting political leadership in general. Just as Lenin did not reject the spontaneity of mass struggle, the difference between them lay primarily in their nuanced approach to intervening in the mass movement, a matter of emphasis rather than fundamental disagreement on the necessity of organization or leadership. In the ongoing efforts to portray Rosa Luxemburg as distinct from Lenin, there is a tendency among some Luxemburgists to utilize her to, in effect, justify a rejection of building a revolutionary party or organization altogether. They present the myth that Luxemburg was primarily an advocate for a genuine workers' democracy, sometimes even referring to her as a democratic socialist. While her commitment to democracy was indeed profound, this label often carries connotations that misrepresent her true revolutionary stance, as she was unequivocally a revolutionary, not merely a reformer within a bourgeois democratic framework. This narrative suggests she was diametrically opposed to the supposedly dictatorial methods of Leninism. To support this claim, they often cite an article she wrote in 1904, titled Organizational Questions of the Russian Social Democracy, in which she delivered a strong critique of Lenin and the Bolsheviks, decrying what she termed their ultra-centralism and even blanquism. Blanquism, for context, refers to the idea that a social revolution can be organized and carried out by a small conspiratorial group of revolutionary leaders, rather than by a broad mass movement. If one reads this article, it is indeed a forceful, even harsh attack on the Bolsheviks. Luxemburg was never one to mince words. She possessed a remarkable clarity and boldness in her critique. However, and this is a crucial point that reveals the mark of a truly great revolutionary thinker, she also possessed the profound capacity to admit when she was wrong, to re-evaluate her positions in light of new evidence and unfolding history. And this is precisely what happened in this particular case, a fact we will return to. This 1904 article was written shortly after the significant split within the Russian Social Democratic Party, which divided into the Mensheviks and the Bolsheviks. At that time, Luxemburg, like many leaders within the German workers' movement, had more familiarity with the Mensheviks, and primarily learned about the split from their perspective. Consequently, she initially sided with the Mensheviks, launching this powerful attack on the Bolsheviks, arguably without a full and complete understanding of what Lenin and the Bolsheviks truly stood for, or the specific context of their organizational strategies. Let us delve deeper into this myth and the picture painted by these Luxemburgists. First, I believe this narrative often begins from a fundamentally flawed premise: the assertion that the bureaucratic, Stalinist degeneration of the Russian Revolution flowed directly and inevitably from Lenin's view of organization. This is a common claim, yet it is a profound distortion of historical fact. The tragic reality is that the Stalinist degeneration was primarily a consequence of the objective conditions and unique circumstances prevailing in Russia. A revolution in an incredibly backward country, which crucially remained isolated from the anticipated waves of revolution in more advanced industrial nations. The regime established under the leadership of Lenin and Trotsky, with its vibrant internal debate and democratic centralism, was separated from the later Stalinist regime by what can only be described as a river of blood. The Stalinist apparatus systematically eradicated virtually the entire old Bolshevik guard, the very architects and leaders of the revolution. Thus, Stalinism was not a continuation of Leninism, but in essence its profound negation. Furthermore, these Luxemburgists often inadvertently, or perhaps deliberately, misrepresent what Lenin and the Bolsheviks truly stood for. In order to facilitate this myth, they portray the Bolshevik Party as a rigid, monolithic structure where free debate was stifled and all decisions flowed unilaterally from the leadership, effectively from Lenin alone. However, what they often object to is the very nature of the Bolshevik Party as a revolutionary fighting organization, not merely an academic debating club. It was an organization specifically designed to unite the most advanced conscious layers of the working class, to fulfill the monumental task of leading them to seize power. Internally, it was structured on the principles of democratic centralism. This meant that once an internal debate had thoroughly taken place, once all arguments had been heard, a vote would occur, and the majority decision would be upheld. Following this, the party would then act in a unified manner. This commitment to party discipline and unified action, after open debate, is something that many academics, often uncomfortable with such organizational rigor, tend to find challenging. They prefer the freedom of individual expression without the demands of collective revolutionary discipline. And now for the ultimate clarity, the decisive point that truly dismantles this myth. Rosa Luxemburg herself ultimately changed her mind on the criticisms she articulated in her 1904 article. This reversal was made abundantly clear, both in subsequent articles she penned and in her direct statements at the 1907 Russian Social Democratic Party Congress. She explicitly stated that her earlier warnings and fears of blanquism and ultra-leftism within the Bolshevik Party had proven to be unfounded, that reality had, in her own words, put it in the distant past. While only 2 years had elapsed, these were 2 years of profound, history-shattering revolutionary experience, an experience that had demonstrated unequivocally that the Bolsheviks' approach was correct. Consequently, she firmly sided with the Bolsheviks against the Mensheviks. Therefore, one simply cannot, without profoundly distorting what she said, what she wrote, and what she did, claim that she held a unique theory of spontaneity that rejected the building of a revolutionary organization, or that she was an anti-Leninist or an anti-Bolshevik. If any lingering doubt remained, her very last act, the culmination of her revolutionary life, was dedicated to actively trying to build the German Communist Party, alongside Karl Liebknecht, a determined revolutionary organization whose explicit purpose was to lead the workers to seize power in Germany. This act, above all else, speaks volumes about her true convictions. As you allow these insights to gently settle in your mind, let us now turn our attention to the second persistent myth, the question of Rosa Luxemburg's supposed opposition to the Russian Revolution. This particular narrative claims that she was fundamentally opposed to the Russian Revolution of 1917, the October Revolution, and to the Bolsheviks who led it. This too is a profound misrepresentation, a clear falsification of historical fact. The primary text frequently used to construct this myth is her article, The Russian Revolution, written in 1918. In this specific piece, she does indeed raise several criticisms regarding the actions of the Bolsheviks during the Russian Revolution. These criticisms are often eagerly seized upon by those who wish to present themselves as critical leftists, while simultaneously distancing themselves from the Bolshevik project and Lenin's leadership. However, this myth, like the first, completely ignores vital contextual facts. First, and perhaps most importantly, it overlooks the specific circumstances under which the article was written. When the Russian Revolution erupted in 1917, Rosa Luxemburg was imprisoned by the German High Command, placed there, ironically, for her own safety in the midst of wartime upheaval. Imagine the immense frustration she must have felt, confined within prison walls, while such earth-shattering events unfolded. Her access to information, and crucially, to reliable information, was severely limited. She received only selected papers and censored reports, creating an incomplete and often biased picture of events. It was on the basis of this fragmented, constrained information that she penned her article. And here is another crucial detail. She explicitly stated in letters that this article was written for her own self-clarification, much like one might take notes or journal to think through complex ideas. It was never intended for immediate publication. In fact, she actively refused to publish it during her lifetime, precisely because she understood that her criticisms, however well-intentioned or comradely, could be distorted and weaponized by the enemies of the revolution to undermine and discredit it. Clara Zetkin, a deeply cherished friend and close comrade of Rosa Luxemburg, later confirmed that after Luxemburg's release from prison in November 1918, she explicitly stated that her views expressed in that article had been incorrect, based as they were on insufficient information. The text, as Luxemburg wished, was never published during her life. It did not see the light of day until 1922, when it was published by Paul Levi, after he had been expelled from the German Communist Party for breaches of party discipline. One might surmise that his motivation for publishing it, without Luxemburg's permission or endorsement, was perhaps to stir dissent or to challenge the prevailing party line, to put a hair in the soup, so to speak. This crucial fact, that the text was published without her consent and against her wishes, is almost universally omitted by those who selectively use it to claim her opposition to the Russian Revolution. But even if we were to set aside these vital contextual details, even if we read the actual text today, it is simply not possible to interpret Rosa Luxemburg as being fundamentally opposed to the Russian Revolution or the Bolsheviks. The article, both in its beginning and its end, is filled with profound praise for the Bolsheviks, for Lenin and Trotsky, and for the courageous spirit of the Russian Revolution itself. It is not a denunciation but a deeply engaged, critical appreciation. Allow me to share a quote from the very beginning of the text, which I believe sets the record quite straight and offers a clear perspective on her true sentiments. Whatever a party could offer of courage, revolutionary far-sightedness, and consistency in a historic hour, Lenin, Trotsky, and all the other comrades have given in good measure. All the revolutionary honor and capacity which Western social democracy lacked was represented by the Bolsheviks. Their October uprising was not only the actual salvation of the Russian Revolution, it was also the salvation of the honor of international socialism. This quote, delivered with quiet conviction, leaves little room for misinterpretation. She viewed the October uprising as nothing less than the salvation of the honor of all revolutionaries throughout the world, especially after the profound betrayal of 1914, when the Social Democrats in Germany abandoned internationalist principles for nationalistic war efforts. Her criticisms, then, were not sweeping condemnations but rather specific, concrete, and delivered in a comradely spirit, much like one revolutionary might critically engage with another, aiming for clarity and improvement, not outright rejection. She primarily framed these criticisms as a warning, cautioning against the mechanical one-to-one application of the Russian experience directly to a German revolution. Each revolutionary context, she understood, possessed its own unique characteristics and demands. Moreover, she explicitly explained that the profound problems faced by the Russian Revolution were a direct consequence of its isolation and the inherently backward conditions of the country. She stated this with remarkable clarity, asserting that the ultimate responsibility for these challenges did not lie with the Bolsheviks themselves, but rather, as she powerfully articulated, rested on the shoulders of the German working class, and, most emphatically, on the shoulders of the leaders of the German working class. For Luxemburg, the only enduring solution to these problems, a solution that could not be found solely within Russia, lay in breaking the isolation of the Russian Revolution by successfully carrying out a German revolution. It was in effect a passionate plea, an urgent call to action for German workers to rise up and assist their Russian comrades to overcome the immense challenges they faced. And so her text served as both a warning against mechanical imitation and a stirring call to battle, urging the German workers to understand their historical responsibility. If we read her article in its entirety, allowing ourselves to be guided by the full sweep of her arguments, rather than selectively picking and choosing quotes out of context, it becomes truly impossible to interpret Rosa Luxemburg as being fundamentally opposed to Lenin and Trotsky, or to the Russian Revolution itself. To do so is to construct a dishonest narrative, a misrepresentation of her deepest convictions. She was, in essence, in agreement with Lenin on all the major strategic questions of the revolution. She understood and supported the manner in which the October Revolution was carried out, and she grasped the immense, often difficult, necessities that Lenin and Trotsky had to undertake to defend the young Soviet Republic against its myriad internal and external enemies. Crucially, she was a true internationalist, possessing a profound understanding that the success of the German Revolution was inextricably linked to the survival and flourishing of the Russian Revolution. What is also notable, and often overlooked by these Luxemburgists, is what happened just a few months after she wrote this article. The German Revolution indeed broke out, a tumultuous period that brought her freedom from prison in November 1918. When she emerged, she immediately, without hesitation, plunged herself back into the heart of the struggle. She wrote prolifically, delivered powerful speeches, and engaged in every possible effort to secure the victory of the German Revolution. And in doing so, she found herself face to face with many of the very same problems and dilemmas that the Bolsheviks had encountered in Russia. What is truly revealing is that, when confronted with these realities, she arrived at strikingly similar conclusions as her Russian comrades. One of the most serious criticisms she initially leveled against the Bolsheviks, and one that is still eagerly seized upon by those who wish to portray Luxemburg as a champion of bourgeois democracy against the dictatorship of the proletariat of Lenin and the Bolsheviks, was their decision to disband the Constituent Assembly. To understand this, it is important to remember that Lenin and the Bolsheviks, throughout their history, had indeed supported the call for a Constituent Assembly, viewing it as a significant step forward from the oppressive despotism of the Tsarist regime. However, by January 1918, at the time of its dissolution, the Constituent Assembly no longer represented a step forward. In comparison to the newly emerged Soviets, the workers' councils that had sprung up organically across Russia, it had in fact become a step backward. The Soviets offered a far superior, more dynamic, and truly democratic form of workers' power, fundamentally different from the static and often unresponsive nature of a bourgeois parliamentary system. No bourgeois parliamentary system, by its very nature, is truly capable of expressing the rapidly changing, fluid views and desires of the masses of workers when they are in revolutionary motion. Such a system is like a still photograph, capturing a moment that quickly passes, while the living, breathing movement of the people continues to evolve. The Constituent Assembly, in this context, was a snapshot of a previous political moment, and events had rapidly surpassed its relevance. Therefore, when the Bolsheviks dissolved the Constituent Assembly, they did not do so out of an anti-democratic impulse. Rather, they acted because it had been superseded by a far more democratic and responsive system, the power of the Soviets. Luxemburg, when writing her article from prison, pondered this question, asking why these two forms, the Constituent Assembly and the Soviets, could not simply exist side by side. It is, in a profound way, quite revealing how her perspective shifted when confronted with similar realities in Germany. A year later, in the autumn of 1918, as the German Revolution unfolded, the answer to her own question became starkly clear. In Germany, just as in Russia, workers' councils had sprung up all over the country, and mirroring the situation in Russia, the leadership of the German Social Democratic Party attempted to use the National Assembly, the German equivalent of the Constituent Assembly, as a mechanism to derail the German Revolution. Their aim was to divert it away from the path of genuine workers' power and socialist transformation into the more confined channels of bourgeois democracy, effectively trying to halt the revolution in its tracks. Rosa Luxemburg, now free from prison and directly engaged in the revolutionary struggle, responded with characteristic sharpness and clarity. She declared unequivocally that the National Assembly was an outmoded legacy of bourgeois revolutions, an empty shell. She went further, in a statement that put a powerful verdict on her own earlier questions, asserting that to resort to the National Assembly today is consciously or unconsciously to turn the revolution back to the historical stage of bourgeois revolutions. Anyone advocating it is a secret agent of the bourgeoisie, an unconscious spokesman of petty bourgeois ideology. Here, in her own words, she offered a direct and powerful refutation of her earlier, more tentative questions. If she had been in prison, writing from limited information, and had advocated for the Constituent Assembly to exist alongside the Soviets, her later, lived experience in Germany compelled her to reject such a position entirely. Anyone who claims that her earlier criticism of the Bolsheviks regarding the Constituent Assembly represents her ultimate and desired path for the future simply misunderstands or distorts her historical trajectory. Her actions and statements in the German Revolution demonstrate an undeniable alignment with Lenin's practical conclusions. So for anyone who approaches this history with an honest and open mind, it becomes quite clear that Rosa Luxemburg, at the deepest level, agreed with Lenin and the Bolsheviks. Neither she nor they were anti-democrats. Instead, they recognized that bourgeois national democracy, while a step forward from feudalism, needed to be superseded by a far more advanced and direct form of democracy, the power of the workers, exercised through their councils or Soviets. This was the profound and shared understanding that emerged from the crucible of revolution. And so we cannot use Rosa Luxemburg as an apology for parliamentarism or opportunism, as some on the left continue to do today. Her legacy is one of unwavering revolutionary conviction, not one of compromise with bourgeois institutions when the opportunity for true workers' power arises. As we gently bring our journey through these historical currents to a close, allowing the insights to settle peacefully within your mind, I hope this exploration has effectively illuminated and shed light on these persistent misconceptions. There are, of course, other myths surrounding her, which one might explore in greater depth in other contexts. But these two, her supposed anti-Leninism and her alleged opposition to the Russian Revolution, are arguably the most significant. Rosa Luxemburg, with her boundless energy and profound conviction, threw herself wholeheartedly into the German Revolution. However, she did not get to fight the battle to its ultimate conclusion. Her vibrant life was tragically cut short. as we know, by the reactionary Freikorps paramilitary groups, spurred on by forces within the very social democratic leadership she had so fiercely challenged. She was brutally murdered alongside her comrade Karl Liebknecht, another outstanding leader of the newly formed Communist Party, 103 years ago today. Her death, and that of Liebknecht, left the nascent German Communist Party, which was only a few weeks old, barely 2 weeks to be precise, headless and vulnerable. In the months that followed, many other experienced leaders of the party were also tragically killed. The German Revolution, deprived of its most seasoned and visionary leadership, ultimately ended in defeat. This defeat was not merely a setback for Germany. It was a profound catastrophe for workers worldwide. It left the Russian Revolution in an even more perilous state of isolation, surrounded by hostile forces, and perhaps most tragically, it paved the way for the rise of darker, more destructive forces in Germany, ultimately leading to the horrors of fascism. We know, with the somber clarity of hindsight, what unfolded from that moment. One might quietly ponder, could it have been otherwise? If we reflect upon the stark differences between the outcomes in Germany and Russia, a crucial distinction emerges: the presence in Russia of the Bolshevik Party. This was a cadre organization, meticulously built over many years, firmly rooted in Marxist theory, and deeply embedded within the working class. When the German Revolution erupted, the Spartacists, the courageous forerunners of the German Communist Party, were, by comparison, a relatively loose network of only a few thousand activists. Some estimates suggest there were perhaps only 50 dedicated members in Berlin, the capital of a major, multi-million-person country, attempting to lead a revolution. They formed the Communist Party in the very midst of the revolution, on New Year's Eve 1918 to 1919. 2 months after the revolution had begun. In my view, at that specific historical juncture, it was primarily Lenin who truly grasped the indispensable need for a revolutionary cadre organization, one built patiently and systematically over many years. For a significant period, Rosa Luxemburg, and perhaps even Lenin to some extent, had held on to the hope that the German Social Democratic Party could fulfill this role. However, in Russia, without such an existing mass party, they recognized the urgent necessity of building the Bolshevik Party from the ground up. To some degree, this historical context, this difference in organizational experience, can help us understand Rosa Luxemburg's initial abstract approach to organizational questions. However, what it does not and cannot do for us, as those who look back on history with the benefit of hindsight, is to justify taking her initial, less developed views on organization and elevating them to her defining principle. We cannot make the same mistake as those who selectively appropriate her weak side, transforming it into a positive virtue. Instead, we have a profound responsibility to learn from history, to gaze upon its unfolding tapestry, and to discern what is truly needed for the future. What is needed fundamentally is the patient and deliberate construction of a cadre organization, a revolutionary organization on a worldwide scale. This organization